My name is Melissa Wrubel, and I am an engineer here at Kipcon. I've been with Kipcon for 15 years. Let me just see if I can advance these forward. There we go. Little picture of me there. I have about 35 years experience, maybe a little more at this point in the industry. I started out in designing multi-family sites, which I'm sure everyone here today is quite familiar with, and also with commercial sites and some minor work in industrial sites. So I have design experience from early on in my career. I've been with Kipcon for about 15 years. And the types of projects I am largely involved with now are some design projects, but largely remedial projects for our client base who are multifamily communities and their management. So the purpose of our webinar today is to talk about the purpose of specifications and what is included in those, what the process is for putting together specifications and going through the process of executing a project. So we're going to be talking about who are the people that are involved. It's not just the homeowners association and the construction firm. We'll see the parties that are involved. We'll talk about the process and the contracts, the types of documents that are included in a bid package and in a contract. We'll talk about what contract administration entails during the active construction. And then we'll talk briefly about ways that you could possibly reduce the cost of bidding out projects and going through having specifications prepared, and how to minimize risk during the construction phase of a project. So as I'm sure I mentioned, everyone here is probably very familiar with multifamily communities and the types of projects that are often part of being in a multifamily community that eventually come up. So paving and roofing and anything building envelope related are typically the largest dollar-wise and even area-wise types of projects within a community. Following right after that are drainage and some other things having to do with building components and other site components. You may also have mechanical equipment in a clubhouse or shared mechanical equipment in a multi-story building. That can be a type of project that you have ready to go as well. So why would you want to undertake a project? Well, most communities have a reserve study in which there is a estimated remaining useful life that's shown in that study. So keeping in mind that a reserve study is not intended to be a replacement schedule, but a reserve study is a budgetary tool. However, when you look at a reserve study, you get a pretty good idea based on remaining useful life. And as you have that reserve study updated, you're always having an engineering firm or a reserve study preparer take a look at what those estimating remaining useful lives are and how they correspond to the condition of components. So if you are actively having your reserve study updated, you are well aware of how your components are aging and whether they are ready for replacement or not. You may also want to upgrade certain components. For example, you may have wood retaining walls on your sites, and I understand that a lot of communities like the looks of the wood retaining walls, but some communities are not too happy with the way that those materials age, and they want to upgrade to, say, segmental block retaining wall, or maybe you have mechanical equipment that's outdated and not very efficient. You might want to upgrade that. You may want to put in new amenities. Of course, a reserve study would not cover the cost of that. You're not reserving for new things you're putting in your communities, but some communities want new things. They might want a new pickleball court or a new community gathering area. There may be some unfortunate reasons too for undertaking projects such as damage from flooding or storms or things like that. Ice causes a lot of damage. We have ice, fire, unfortunately happens from time or accidents. Ice damming is one that's not necessarily caused by, can be preventable if you are aware that it's happening and you make improvements to the airflow through the building to prevent the ice damming. So sources of funds, I mentioned reserves earlier. In some cases, you are reserving, hopefully you're reserving for the common elements that require replacement at some point. If there are not enough reserves, sometimes there are special assessments when a replacement becomes very, very important and there aren't enough reserves, an assessment on the homeowners may be implemented, or borrowing. In the case of an unfortunate event, there may be insurance funds that cover the cost of that project. So let's dive in to the actual process. So as I mentioned, contracts are not necessarily just between the association and the contractor. When you are starting with a design firm to design a specification for your replacement, there are several parties that are involved. So obviously, the community association and the association manager, who oftentimes will act on their behalf, or maybe there's a board of directors that's also involved that may deal directly with the parties. The association's attorney becomes important when you are at the contract phase, either with contracting with an engineer or when you've selected a contractor. You typically have an attorney review those contracts to make sure that those contracts are representing the interests of the association. The engineer, or you may have an architect, or you may have MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer involved in, depending on whether those projects involve mechanical components. Now, the engineer's role is to prepare the specifications and to help coordinate the bidding process. And also during the construction phase, an association may choose to have the engineer involved in contract administration. We'll talk about what that entails. And then, of course, the contractor who performs the work. So I'm going to go to the next slide because it graphically shows this, what I'm about to explain. So when the community association enters a contract with the engineer and with the contractor, they've selected the contractor and they've entered into that, and the design professional, perhaps they've chosen for that design professional to prepare the bid documents and to be involved in contract administration. There is a relationship between the owner and the design professional and the contractor. The owner's role is, of course, the unit owners are the community association, and they are represented by the board of trustees and oftentimes also a community manager. The design professional, as I mentioned, could be an engineer, could be an architect. It's a professional who designs something. It could be a landscape architect if you are doing some sort of aesthetic upgrades or plantings. The design professional, a professional, will draft the specifications. They will do the design for the project and they will put together a bid package. And then, of course, the contractor. He's responsible for taking those specifications prepared by the engineer and performing the work under the agreed upon contract between the owner and the contractor. So let's talk about the contracts a little bit. So when keeping that relationship in mind, there are two types of contracts that the community association will have. One at the design phase with the engineer, and the engineer prepares the contract, also known as the proposal. So if you call up the engineering firm and you say, we would like to have an asphalt pavement remediation performed in our community, can you provide a proposal for to prepare specifications with options for bidding services and contract administration. The engineer will give you a proposal which will then become the basis for a contract between the engineer and the association. So once that's accepted and the engineer goes through the design stage phases and the bidding stage phases of that contract, and a contractor is selected, then the community association contracts directly with the chosen contractor. So the contractor will then provide their own contract that is then reviewed by the association's attorney. And the bid package that's prepared by the engineer under the first contract becomes it becomes an addendum to that contract between the association and the contractor. So it is part of those contract documents between the community association and the contractor. So why are the contracts important? They define the relationship of the parties involved in the contract. And when things are going smoothly, people don't really look at the contract. But contracts become very important when there's a problem or there's a question about who's responsible for what's going on. Say there is a problem on site. Unfortunately, somebody is injured on site. What does the contract say about that? Or let's say that the contractor does the work and there is a problem within the first year after something is installed. And what does the contractor say, or what does the contract say regarding the type of deficiency that has arisen and what the contractor is responsible for and what the association is responsible for under those conditions. So the more that you can make a contract very clear, the better documented it is when there is a problem. So the owner-engineer contract, what does that entail? And as I mentioned, it's the basis is typically the proposal that the engineer provides. So what do those proposals typically say? It usually says that there's some sort of specifications that are going to be prepared, which would include the design drawings and some sort of written form of specification as well. Sometimes, in some cases, the engineer is asked to prepare a cost estimate based on the specifications they are preparing. I will tell you that if you were going to put a contract, or I'm sorry, a bid package directly out to bid, there's really not a great need for a cost estimate because the bids, let me back up a bit, because when you're asking an engineer to prepare a cost estimate so you can then compare them to bids. It's not a good use of that expense, and I'll tell you why. When an engineer prepares a cost estimate, they are using an industry standard cost basis, oftentimes to prepare those cost estimates. And actual contractor pricing can vary substantially from a prepared estimate. And we qualify this whenever we are asked to prepare an estimate, we qualify and say that the contractor bids you are about to receive may vary quite substantially from the estimate based on industry standards that we just prepared for you. So if you were taking those bid documents, you go right out to bid with it, you are getting actual pricing from contractors. So then that's the cost estimates that's prepared has no bearing on what the actual cost of that project will be. The contractors are giving you their best cost to perform that work. So again, going back to the contract between the engineer and the association, there are options for bidding and contract administration. So bidding services, they can entail various types of bidding services. One might be a pre-bid meeting in which a walkthrough with the contractors is performed. That's not always done. It's not always a default inclusion in the proposal, but that can be part of the bidding process. Then you are issuing the RFP, the contractors are going to respond to that. based on the contractor's response and quotes that they're given. Those bids are evaluated to make sure that they're in conformance with the specifications. And then they are submitted to the association and a contractor selection takes place. Once the contractor is selected, the notification goes out to the contractor that the bid has been awarded to them. The other contractors are notified that a contractor has been selected, and that the bid process has ended. Then once that contract is in place between the contractor and the association, the engineer can provide contract administration services under their own contract with the association. So the purpose of contract administration, we'll talk about that in a little more detail, so I won't cover it here. So the proposal an engineer provides, which eventually becomes the contract, will typically describe in detail the work to be performed. That'll include a deliverable. What will the association get for this money that they're paying? So if you look through the scope of work in a proposal with for the engineer, there is a section that will describe what the association will be getting for that. So it's typically a set of specifications that includes the contract drawings and specifications. If you're also doing bidding, the contract will say that we are going to select, or I'm sorry, issue an RFP to so many contractors. The engineer contract would also describe the cost for the work. That might be on a lump sum basis or a time and expense basis, depending upon what the services are. What are the payment terms? How will the association be invoiced for the engineer services, and how will payments be invoiced? The schedule. Sometimes a contract will stipulate that services will be rendered in a certain period of time. And if there is a dispute, how will that be resolved? And if there's any additional work that is incidental to the base contract, how will that be handled? How will that be built? Will written authorization be required? And then, of course, sections involving the terms of the contract for limits of liability. What happens if something goes wrong, somebody gets hurt on the site? What is the process for indemnification? As I mentioned before, the construction documents typically include design drawings, which are the physical drawings that it's a graphical depiction of the work to be done, and then specifications, which include those design drawings, and oftentimes a project manual, which is a written version of what the scope of the project is. So let's talk about design drawings a little bit. So as I mentioned, they're a graphical representation of the work that needs to be done. And depending upon the design professional that you're engaging with, that might be a set of architectural plans, it might be a set of site plans, it might be a landscape plan or a landscape architect's plan for something that is going to be added or improved upon. So you see here the different types of sheets that might be involved in these plans. Architectural obviously deals more with the building, so it's floor plans and facade type issues, or sections through the building if some sort of remediation or new addition is going to be done. Other types of engineering plans could be civil if you are dealing with something like a drainage issue or something site related like a retaining wall. Structural if has anything to do with the building structure, not so much the building envelope, but there may be structural calculations that need to be done. And of course, I mentioned mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. There are MEP engineers that can provide these design services. So the specifications, as I mentioned, are the written representation, description of what is going to be done in the project. And there are different sections to the specifications that go into a deep definition of what the project entails. So the design drawings and the written specifications, as I mentioned, become part of the contract with the contractor. One of the things I want to make clear here, when you are engaging with the contractor, that the design drawing, the contractor is they are the professional that has experience in construction of whatever they are doing. When you put out an RFP for contractors, there will be a section typically in the specifications that require the contractor, at least with Kipcons, require the contractor to be licensed in the state that they're working in and to have experience with the type of construction that they're doing. So the contractor is the professional that knows how to construct it. So they are responsible for what's called the means and methods of construction. So specifications that are prepared by an engineer will describe what needs to be done, but they're not going to tell the contractor how to do it, how big their crew should be, what type of equipment should be used, what their schedule should be. The contractor is the experienced professional that will look at the specifications and decide how that work needs to be done. So there are different sections and specifications. When the project manual is prepared, there are introductory sections that describe, give a bird's eye view of what the project will be and what the process for bidding is. Who should those bids be sent to? Is there going to be a pre-bid meeting? Will there be contractor interviews after the bids are submitted? Just to give the contractor an idea of what the bid process will be. If there are instructions in there to the contractor, if they have questions, if they have technical questions, who should they ask? If they want to enter the site, who should they contact? And how to submit the bids? What format do they need to be in? Are we submitting a PDF of our quote on a specific form? Are we submitting them in electronic form? Do they need to be in hard form? Sometimes there are sealed bids that are submitted that are not opened until a certain date. Oftentimes in the specs, there is a bid proposal form. So this is a document that has that's set up with the different stages of construction, giving or different portions of the construction that involve different materials or different procedures that the contractor is asked to give specific pricing for. So when we're putting out specifications to bid, oftentimes in a bigger projects like pavement or roofing, we're getting pricing for specific parts. I'll use a pavement base bid as an example. We don't just simply say, here are the specs and give us your best price in a lump sum form. We will provide the contractor. All the contractors get the same bid form and they're asked to submit their bid in that form, where the stages of the project are broken down. Using the pavement as an example, the stages might be their general setup as a beginning, any kind of traffic control, notice to tenants, and general mobilization. We'll ask for separate line items for that. In the actual project itself, in the hard costs of the project would be the milling of the surface course and repaving any known portions of the project we know that need to be done. Repair of catch basins, changing out of catch basin grates, curbing work that might need to be done, and the final marking of the pavement. So those are all separate line items in that bid proposal form. And then there's also a unit cost section. Typically, the base bid deals with the portions of the project that you know absolutely are part of the project. They have to be done. Then there is a unit cost section for incidentals. With construction, any type of construction, there is the potential for unforeseen conditions. And the unit prices are an attempt to capture those items that are typically encountered that are unforeseen conditions. They're not part of the base bid, but you may encounter them. So we'll ask for prices for those as well. We'll ask for a confirmation for how long the prices provided are good. We'll ask for references. No one is ever going to give you a bad reference. So references, we don't as an engineering firm, we don't offer the service of checking references, but they're offered for the benefit of the owner. If they would like to call the references, they would like to take a look at completed projects. That's why the references are asked for. We ask that there's usually typically in the contract an agreement that the contractor will not do work in the case of a multifamily community, incidental side work for unit owners. I've been involved in several cases where a contractor had done side work that was specifically excluded in the contract that did not turn out well. And so that's a common clause in specifications. If there's any form of bond, typically with multi-unit types of projects, there is no requirement for a bond. Bonds are oftentimes, if there is major new construction happening, a bid bond might be required by the township. But for multifamily communities, bonds are not something that you see very often, or surety. And general conditions, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Oh, here we are, general conditions. So they're meant to, again, define the relationships and what will be the method of payment. The contractor will, when they, in their contract, they may require a certain amount up front to begin the project. They may not require anything to begin the project, but they may have a milestone, a payment structure where at 50% completion, or after, if there's say 4 phases of a project, maybe there's a requirement for payment after the end of each phase. There's typically a requirement for retainage. Sometimes this is spelled out in the contractor's contract, where there might be an 8% or a 10% retainage that's held till the end of the project. That's after substantial completion. That if there's any punch list items, they're taken care of. The community is satisfied that that the work has been done in conformance with the contract, and that retainage is released. Sometimes there will be project schedule that's included. Oftentimes that is weather dependent. If it's something exterior, like a pavement or roofing or something like that, the contractor will provide a schedule for that work. But if you are getting 2 months of rain like we did in the early part of this year, that is subject to change. The conditions include any sort of insurance requirements. I'm going to move very quickly through this section. If you want a copy of this webinar presentation, we can provide that to you. So I'm going to move this. You'll be able to see what's written on the slides. If you get a copy of that, I'm going to move it through this quickly, just so that I have a little time at the end for some Q&A if that comes up. So we'll move very quickly. Again, general conditions include insurance requirements that stipulate certain conditions on site. If the insurance is required, who is responsible, and what are the accommodations for that. Again, we talked about bond requirements, not typically included in a multifamily community project. Indemnifications. What is the definition of what happens if somebody's to be injured on site? If a resident is injured, or the engineer, or something might unfortunately happen, and who can be held liable for that, and why. Again, we went over the schedule of values, or what's in that bid form, so I won't elaborate on that here. Again, just to reiterate, base costs are for the portions of the project that you know you're going to have to do. Unit pricing is for unforeseen or incidentals that might come up. I'll just touch on this briefly. Some portions of the project, we might ask for a lump sum, and the contractor will give just one lump sum price to perform that portion of the project. Sometimes there are unit prices involved. Just for example, using our pavement project, say for example, there are old style stormwater catch basin grates, and they all need to be changed out with a bicycle safe grate to protect the liability in the community for bicyclists through the community. That might be part of the base project that we know that we need to do, but we're also going to ask for a unit price for that in case um, something comes up where, just so you know what each one of those items are going to cost you. Some types of services or um, contractor activities might be time and materials. Maybe there's a portion of the project they don't know how much they're going to need. A good example is sheathing under siding. When you remove that siding, there may be you may have a known deficiency with the sheathing underneath, and that needs to be replaced before you put your new siding on, but that quantity isn't known until you take that siding off. So there might be a time and materials component involved in that. So there's different ways of uh, different structures of pricing for projects. Guarantees and warranties is something very important to be included in the specifications. I mentioned earlier, perhaps there's something the contractor's done, he's left the site. One of the very common ones, and I'll use the pavement example again, is stress cracks. And the type of asphalt that's available today in the state of New Jersey, it's not uncommon for stress cracks to form in the pavement, not all over the pavement, but at certain structures. Oftentimes, if you have a catch basin on both sides of the street and there's a sanitary sewer manhole that's running down the middle of the street, and there's a manhole right in the middle of the street between those two catch basins, it's not uncommon for a stress crack to form across the asphalt pavement within the first few years of being installed. That's not because the contractor installed it wrong, it's just the way the material behaves. So it's very important that when you have a contract that you stipulate in what cases is that guarantee or warranty going to cover something. If there is a workmanship issue, then there might be a 1 year or 2 year warranty period, just as an example, that the contractor, if there's a workmanship issue and that there's damage or deterioration that's resulted as a result of that workmanship issue, they would need to come back under the terms of the contract and take care of that. And communication, very, very important during the course of a project. When a project is active, Kipcon will always ask that the owner's representative and the engineer and the contractor copy each other on all communication, just so that no information gets lost. And is there any permits or inspections? Oftentimes, with building remediation, there needs to be an inspection by the official at the municipality. The contractor is typically responsible to coordinate any inspections that are related to those permits, and to actually go and get the permits for the work. And that's stipulated in the contract as well. We talked about the contract forms in the form of guarantee. So once the contractor is selected, or even before, there might be before you finalize a contract with the contractor, I should say, there's a period of bidding and negotiation. So in the initial RFP, as I mentioned, there might be a walkthrough where certain changes are made just based on some value engineering suggestions or something like that. Let's talk about the bidding process first. So the RFP is sent out. You're going to select contractors to bid. Typically, the engineer will provide a bid list to management or to the board, whoever is the owner's representative, and they'll look over that. They might make some additions or deletions from that. And once that contractor bid list is approved, the RFP is sent out. Oftentimes, if we are dealing with multi-community or multi-family community types of projects, as I mentioned, paving, roofing, things like that, we do so much of that type of work that we have a bid list that we provide to the community association. So some of these other um, types of sources of selecting contractors might come into play if there are types of projects that are not typical to an association. So we may not have a bid list ready for that. We may need to go to other sources to recommend contractors, which we may or may not have had experience with. So not, again, not typical to community associations. We don't typically publicly bid the projects. They're bid to a list of contractors that we are experienced in working with. And that's typically any multifamily community engineer. Again, the pre-bid conference, if you're going to do that, you might want to make it mandatory that it's set for a certain date. This is the date we're doing the walkthrough. If you're going to bid, you need to be at the walkthrough. Sometimes it's optional. You may set a date for a walkthrough, but the contractor is not required to attend to bid on the project. So again, I mentioned value engineering. I'll give you an example. We issued an RFP about a year or two ago for a project in which the walkways, older community, so the ground had moved around just from landscaping equipment driving over years and years, to put in some drainage. In some areas, there were some trench drains that were installed to pick up the water, and we had specified a certain type of drain. And the contractors, they had a walkthrough with the contractors, a pre-bid walkthrough, and one of the contractors recommended a different type of material they had been working with, and it was going to be less expensive. So we did a comparison and provided it to the association so they could there are pros and cons of using a different type of material. There can be cons as well, but the cost, it may so significantly reduce the cost of the project that it's considered. And in this case, a different type of trench drain was chosen because of the value it brought to the project. So that's just an example of that. When we get those bids back and we're looking at them, oftentimes there will be just a group of contractors who come in very, very close to each other, and then there are outliers who are having either very, very low bid or a very, very high bid. So when we see those low bids, they're oftentimes very attractive because of the price, but we need to go back to them and confirm. My first question to the contractor is, are you sure of the pricing that you have in this contract? And I may have other follow-up questions. I may see that one component of the contract was bid exceptionally low, and I'll ask them to just go back and make sure that that's their price. So you want to confirm those low bids. You can't always just take them at face value. Some other things that might be a deal breaker are project schedule. Perhaps you have a contractor that cannot perform the project for several months, and the community is in a hurry. And are there any subcontractors that are being used? So oftentimes contractors have used subcontractors, and that's okay, but they need to disclose that they're doing that and who those subcontractors will be. And again, I'll use my pavement project as an example. Oftentimes with pavement projects, there's also some concrete work that's involved. So that might be concrete curb. Catch basins oftentimes have some masonry boxes or some masonry components to them, or where sidewalk ramps come down, or the pavement project may also include a portion of the project that involves replacement of some concrete sidewalks. So if we're bidding out to pavement contractors, unless they have a concrete division, the contractor may use a concrete subcontractor. And so they need to disclose that and make the association aware that they are going to be using a subcontractor. And what are the terms of them using a subcontractor? That should be part of the negotiation. We talked about bond versus payment terms and saving based on payment terms. One of the things I want to mention is that, again, using our pavement example, because it's such a large project, there are oftentimes contracts that are spaced over several years. So when we put that out to bid, we will, at the request of the association, ask for an optional cost for them to do the project all in 1 year, to see if there's any cost savings involved in doing it that way. And it may be a make or break decision on whether they do it all in 1 year or go ahead and space the project out over several years. And also working hours. Typically, if a contractor is working on a weekend, there's going to be a premium involved with that. That needs to be spelled out in the negotiation. So we want to make sure during this stage in the negotiation with the contractor that everything is clearly spelled out. Again, when things are going well, nobody really looks at the contract. When they're not going well, which can happen, you want to have a very defined contract in place so that if anything does go wrong, the outcome is hopefully structured in a way that things come out in a positive way. Also, it's the time to make sure that the scope of work is clear. So if the contractor has any questions, any concerns about the scope of work, that is the time to clear that up before any contracts are signed. So let's say that that the contractor is selected, the contracts have been reviewed by the attorney. There's a contract in place, everybody's ready to move forward. So going back to the contract between the engineer and the association, there may be a component in there. We put an option in our project contracts for bidding services and contract administration. So that contract administration is part of the engineer owner contract. So if that's selected, we would provide contract administration services, which entail they could entail periodic inspection of the work at key points during the work. It can entail the engineer being present on site for the duration of active work, which can be very expensive. So multifamily communities don't usually engage in that. They'll usually engage in a contract where the engineer goes out at key points. Again, let's use our pavement project as an example. We always recommend at a minimum that the engineer attend a pre-construction conference that includes the contractor, the owner's representative, and the engineer. We come out after the top course is milled off to walk the base course with the contractor to look at any proposed areas of base repair and approve those repairs. And by approve, I mean agree with the fact that these areas are in need of repair before the top course is put back. Then we come back after the top course is repaired, and then a final walkthrough after everything is striped with, again, the owner's representative, I should say, the engineer, and the contractor. So those are the key points that we would visit the site. We're not present there all the time. So then we also are there. The purpose of our presence on site is to compare the contractor's work to those original bid documents. Is the work being performed in general conformance to those construction documents? And we also review any type of invoicing. We prepare punch lists and we provide field reports to the owner's representative, and we copy the contractor, again, keeping that chain of communication open. We provide them with the field reports. Are there any action items that need attention during the contract administration phase? Oh, and these are all the things I just said. Again, I want to reiterate that contract administration is often called oversight, and those words are used interchangeably with the term contract administration. But I want to be clear that oversight does not mean supervision. Again, the contractor is responsible for the means and methods of construction. They are the professional that knows how to construct something. So cost reduction techniques. I have a lot of communities that have, they've saved up money, they're ready to do some projects that are sort of in tandem with each other. So when you can combine projects and have the contractor come in, set up under a general mobilization, get things done, and finish multiple projects. Again, I used the pavement uh, example. I've done pavement projects that are also done in conjunction with retaining walls or concrete work, that if you can combine those projects, you may realize an overall cost reduction of the projects, both from a design standpoint and from a construction execution standpoint. For some types of projects, and this largely has to do with MEP types of projects, if you're going through um, an MEP design professional, they may be aware of incentives or rebates. Oftentimes, say for example, in New Jersey through the state, there might be incentives or rebate programs that are active, that it give you some sort of relief, either a tax relief or some sort of cost savings on the overall project. If you use certain types of eco-friendly materials or certain efficiencies that will help you realize those cost savings through those incentives or rebates. And if you're doing something that's an upgrade, you may have an initial higher cost of replacement. And again, I use those examples of the wood and the segmental block retaining wall. Segmental block retaining wall to install is typically a higher cost than a wood tie retaining wall. However, it has a longer useful life, and the maintenance is virtually, I say virtually zero. There is some maintenance involved with it, but nowhere near the level that a wood tie retaining wall has. So you can look at the long-term cost savings of such a type of projects. A lot of HVAC projects also have a long-term savings aspect that is related. So you want to look at those break-even periods, and is it more efficient to maybe spend a little more on the project, but be able to remove the cost of replacement from your reserve study for a period because of the long life of the things you're replacing it with. So that's another cost reduction technique. You also want to minimize risks in your project execution. So again, that contract is very important. You want to clearly understand the roles of each party. You want to have professionals involved that will maximize the outcome. So you want to have the engineer involved. You want your attorney reviewing any contracts. Also keep in mind that there is a risk involved sometimes with just choosing somebody who's got an incredibly low price because they have a low price. That's the low price bidder is not always the best alternative. Um, you want to really review the bids that you're receiving and make sure that those prices are representative of the work that's actually specified. And of course, having your payment terms uh, well defined. So you want to be paying on completed work only if possible. I mentioned the scenario in which a contractor might ask for payment up front. That's not wrong. And there may be reasons for that. The materials involved might be very expensive. There are a number of reasons why a contractor might ask for a deposit up front, and that's perfectly fine. But you want to be sure that the contractor that you're using is reputable, and that payment up front is justified. Again, if you're going through an engineering firm and the project is a typical type of project, we have bid lists that include contractors that we know are reputable and do good work. All right, so I'm going to open up the chat now. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I've got the chat box open. If you want to ask a question, I will take that now. I see there's a question here let me just back up to the top so I don't miss anybody. All right, I've got a question here. Should the owner engineer be expected to recommend firm contractors to which the RFP should be sent? Um, yeah, I mean, if you were contracting with an engineer to send out an RFP, I know Kipcon will always provide you with a bid list, and we always make it very clear as to which contractors we have experience with. And if there's a case where we need to include a contractor that we have not worked with, we will make that very clear. So that if they perhaps have a great price, full disclosure, yeah, they have a great price and they're responding to our scope of work. However, be aware that we have not worked with them before and we're not familiar with the quality of their work. So we make that very apparent upfront. I'll give you an example, because I think examples always clearly illustrate the point. Kipcon does not do surveying. So for some projects, I need to put out an RFP as part of our base contract to several surveyors. Now, it's always great to use a local surveyor. I have my go-tos, but they might not be near where you live. So I will put together a bid list that includes my go-tos. And also I will research their other surveyors in the area that look like they have been around for a while, or I may be referred by somebody who has used a surveyor in a certain area that I have not worked with, that I will include on the bid list, either because I see that they at least have evidence of a good reputation, or they come recommended. So, but I will again disclose that I have not worked with them before. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see, I've got another question here. How, as an engineer, in communicating with the association, what techniques do you use to get across what needs to be done? This is a situation that the association does not understand construction. So there are really two levels to that question. Again, you want to have a good set of specifications and you want to have a good contract in place. So you can always refer back to that. So in terms of what needs to be done, when we're putting together specifications, I always put in our proposal that once the specifications are complete, before we ever go out to bid, that I will meet with the association to go over what the scope of work. I want the association I am working with to be very, very aware of what the scope of work is and what that will look like in practice, what that will look like when it's actually happening, because that makes clear to if they the association that when they get questions from homeowners, what about this, what about that, that the board is educated on what the project entails. So there's that level of communication. During construction, there is a different level of communication because you've got now a contractor involved. You've got a contractor, you've got a representative of the community, you have an engineer involved. And it's that triangle of communication is very essential to the success of the project. So I have projects where I always mention upfront in the project, and I put it right in the field notes that any communication should be that three-way communication. Sometimes it happens where the contractor and the representative of the community have side conversations, and that's fine. That's their choice. But that communication needs to stay open so that if there are any questions, any problems that arise, everyone is in the loop. I have another question here. Should all interested bidders be at the same meeting before bidding? So again, you can have no pre-bid meeting. You can have a pre-bid meeting where that is mandatory, that if you're going to bid, you have to be at the walkthrough. And I see that more often than the other, where there is going to be a pre-bid meeting that's set, but the contractors to bid on that project are not required to be there. So you may have, and that's not that that's wrong, but it may be that you have contractors that are very familiar with your site and they don't necessarily need to be at a pre-bid meeting. there may be an interest in having everyone there, so that, again, open communication, full transparency, and any sort of value engineering recommendations that might come up. Everybody's standing there on site, so there's a benefit to having it done both ways. So it depends on the project and how you want that bidding process to proceed. I know that's kind of a vague answer. And if you want to give me a call or email me, I'm more than happy to talk about specifics with you. I want to go back to the previous question about communication between the association, the engineer, and the contractor. We are well aware, and as most community association engineers are, that people who live in communities, and even people on boards, are not necessarily professionals in the construction industry. And that's the value that an engineer will provide, is that we're taking very technical solutions, and we try to present them in a fashion that is understandable to people who don't deal daily in the industry. So you will get questions from homeowners or even the board that where they have concerns about the way construction is being done, or they might see something happening during a construction project that they're very concerned with, that they think this must be wrong, or this is going to impact me. And because they're lay people, which is fine. Everybody does something different in life. They may have a question, a real concern about that. So it's good to be able to take that very technical information and convert that into something that somebody else can understand. A good example is, again, I'll go back to my pavement project. You can tell I do a lot of pavement. Oftentimes when pavement is in bad shape with a lot of cracks and a lot of low spots, when it rains, the rain is disappearing down into those cracks. And when you put down brand new pavement, that is essentially impervious. So homeowners get a little nervous when it rains and they're seeing all this water that they've never seen before running through their gutters, and they think there's a problem. Again, you would be concerned. You own a home, you see all this water coming down the street, and there's a real concern. So they ask the question, and we can assure them, no, it's because now you've got an impervious surface and it's doing what it was designed to do. It's moving that water to a catch basin instead of disappearing into the ground and destroying your pavement. So just that by way of an example. So we are nearing time. Are there any more questions today?
As a reminder, everyone, I'm going to be sending everyone who is here, I'll be sending out the copy of the presentation and a link to the recording. If you want your CEU certificate, you can either reply to the email I send or send me a separate email, as some of you have already done, which is great. And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Melissa. This is great. If you have any other questions, Melissa's email's there. My email's going to be coming through to you at some point today. So feel free to reach out with anything else going on.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.